Hello, and thank you for watching our webinar. I am joined today by my colleague Ruo, who heads up the Charities legal sector. This is a pre-recorded webinar on the topic of helping charities to access the EU settlement scheme. We will look at how eligible charities and users can access public funding, which has been made available by the government to access the European settlement scheme for those who want to remain in the UK after the 1st of January 2021. Firstly, we shall introduce ourselves. I'm Imelda Reddington. I head up the immigration team at Seymour Parks. I joined in October last year to head up the new practice area. I've worked in immigration for over 12 years now. Seymour Parks is a full-service law firm based in the centre of Reading. We have over 100 staff and service clients from all over the UK. And we also have our charity law specialist, Ruo, who will introduce herself in a moment. At FSP, we offer a tailored approach to our clients, primarily offering practical legal advice. We also offer free seminars, webinars, and podcasts at regular intervals throughout the year across many of our different practice areas. For immigration specifically, we offer bespoke training and workshops for complicated processes such as right to work compliance, sponsor license compliance, and we also offer an administration service to assist registered sponsors with managing their sponsorship license and their migrants visas. Please now let Ruo introduce herself. Over to you, Ruo.
Thank you, Imelda. Hi, everyone. I hope you're keeping well. Thank you for joining us, first of all, on this webinar. As Imelda has said, I am a charities and not-for-profit lawyer at Seymour Parks. Similar to Imelda, I joined FSP over a year ago and lead this area of work at the firm. So I work with both domestic and international charities on a variety of issues ranging from governance to incorporations to mergers and dissolution. I also act for a whole host of not-for-profit entities, and Imelda has already said I run a charities podcast series. So if you are interested in finding out more about the type of discussions, usually topical discussions that I have normally with chief execs of charities, please do check that out on my profile by going to fsp-law.com. So Imelda, maybe if you could perhaps speak first generally about what this EU settlement scheme is.
Yes, of course. Well, the EU settlement scheme is a body of legislation that replaces the EEA regulations known as European law, but sits in the national UK law. The EEA regulations will continue to operate until the 31st of January. However, they will run alongside the European settlement scheme until the end of the transition. The scheme is open to EEA nationals, Swiss nationals, together with their family members, to apply either in the UK or overseas. Applying to the scheme is a simple online process which is accessed through an app on a mobile device. Using the app, the applicant must scan their face, take a photograph, provide a national insurance number, and declare any criminal convictions before they can submit an application. Decisions can be instant or can take up to 5 working days. However, some applications can take a little bit longer if the case is complicated, and I've seen these take up to 30 working days. Now, European nationals who want to stay in the UK after the transition period, i.e. the 31st of December, must register under the European settlement scheme before the 30th of June 2021. For European nationals who are already in the UK with a document under EU law or the EEA regulations, that could be a registration certificate or a permanent residence card. These must be swapped out for status under the European settlement scheme. Now, a number of charities have received funding from the government to target vulnerable groups in accessing this scheme. Ruo now will talk a little bit about those charities and highlight a couple of those which we feel would benefit from accessing these funds. Over to you, Ruo.
Thank you, Imelda. Yeah, that's right. As you have mentioned, certain charities have been in receipt of this funding from the government. Indeed, both charities and certain local authorities have had to go through quite a competitive bidding process to secure this funding. Now, of the 72 or so charities and local authorities in receipt of this funding, I want to draw out a few charity examples just to highlight the coverage of this scheme. Hopefully at the bottom of slide 4 is the link which goes to a directory of the full list of charities and local authorities in receipt of that funding. So we have the likes of the registered charity Asylum Welcome, who are relatively local to us, operating principally from Oxfordshire, and they provide charitable assistance for the benefit of asylum seekers, refugees, vulnerable migrants and detainees. And as part of this EU settlement scheme service that they offer, it's part of their Europa Welcome service, which has helped hundreds of vulnerable EU citizens with their applications for settlement. And what is great is that they help people who are unable to make applications by themselves, whether that's because they struggle with the use of technology or because there are certain language barriers, or indeed if they just simply have some sort of health issues that prevents them from making an application by themselves. And what is very useful is that as part of this Europa Welcome service, they welcome video call appointments, which, as you can imagine, is great in the current climate. And Imelda, we've also seen in recent months the unfortunate rise in incidences of domestic violence due to the lockdown situation and calls to the police in particular. Now, over the first lockdown period, I read that by as much as 10% increase in phone calls to the police due to domestic violence in London. And indeed, I actually act for a not-for-profit entity that work in this space. So we've seen national charities such as Rights of Women, who are also on that list. And this charity aims to promote the legal rights of women through campaigns, publications and training courses. And their very helpful telephone service is actually staffed by specialist women solicitors and barristers. So they essentially assist vulnerable women to apply for this EU settlement scheme. And what I personally really like about this charity and what I find great is the fact that they also work in the area of policy. So they are able to therefore utilise their on-the-ground frontline experience and can go to the Home Office and make certain recommendations due to their direct experience. So we've seen other national charities on that list. So we've got the likes of the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, and one strand of their work is that they promote the education on social policy. They really are a voice of leaders in adult social care, and they promote the need for things like adequate funding and infrastructure. And in relation to this EU settlement scheme, they help citizens with care and support needs to apply for the scheme. And Imelda, we've even seen charities that operate internationally on that list. So that comes to mind is the advice on individual rights in Europe, the AIR Centre, and they provide expert advice on European law. They assist conduct litigation cases where fundamental European rights are at stake. They undertake policy work, training, all the way across to pro bono advocacy. So in the UK, they've operate throughout London, Birmingham, and internationally, they you can see them operating in countries like Albania, Serbia, etc. And they basically assist individuals who are in a bit of a vulnerable situation or who have been a victim of domestic violence. They can contact them directly by phone or email. And for those that are more digitally literate, they could, for instance, go on their webpage and click through a kind of a questionnaire style service, which is very easy to use. I tried it myself. Answer a few questions, and that will essentially assess their eligibility status. So I guess, Imelda, general, we can see that there's currently quite a broad range of charities that have been awarded this funding. And I think that my last point here really is that charities that are not in receipt of this funding, but have been, say, approached by their users who are really in need of this type of assistance, those charities could check the directory. Again, that link is on the bottom of slide 4. And essentially, you could signpost your users to a nearby charity or to your local authority if your local authority is also on that list, who are in a position to help. Indeed, if there is actually a demand from your users, for this type of assistance, it could also be worth for you to keep an eye out on the Home Office webpage to see whether in the near future they could inject more monies into this area so that you could make an application and seek also to be on that list. Now, I know that one of the criterion that led the incumbent charities and local authorities to appear on that list is that the government is keen to ensure that the cohort of charities and local authorities on that list covered a sufficient area of the country so that as many vulnerable people as possible could access that support if they needed it. So I think that brings us nicely to the next part of this webinar. So Imelda, perhaps if you could speak a little bit about the eligibility of the scheme.
Yes, of course. I'd just like to say that thank you very much for that overview of those charities. It's very, very good to know that the funding is spread across a wide area and through various sectors in the UK. So hopefully all of those people who need the funding will get it once they know it's available. Okay, in terms of eligibility and status, I indicated earlier that the scheme is open to European nationals, that's EEA nationals, and to their family members to apply either overseas or in the UK. The applicants must be in the UK physically by 11 PM on the 31st of December 2020, which is formally the end of the transition and our break with the European Union. European nationals must register by the 30th of June 2020, but we have seen that there perhaps are some vulnerable people who may not have the access they need to the scheme and may not be in a position to do so. So we do expect some guidance later for those applicants who may not have been able to access the scheme by the 30th of June to be able to submit where there are exceptional circumstances. Family members can join those European nationals after the 31st of December, provided they can demonstrate that that relationship existed before the end of the transition. Now, once the applicants apply to the scheme, they will obtain one of two statuses. They have no choice in which status to select at the application stage. However, the application awarded will be based on the types of evidence and the amount of evidence that applicant has presented with the application. So the first status an applicant could receive is settled status. Now this is where an applicant can provide evidence to show that they have had continuous residence in the UK for 5 years. And the alternative status is called pre-settled status. Now, this is when the applicant cannot provide sufficient evidence of 5 years. However, anything less than 5 years will be sufficient. And to obtain pre-settled status, the applicant need only show physical presence in the UK. And those who already have status under either a registration certificate or a permanent residence card under the EU law, they can swap their status out for whichever of these status suits their current circumstances.
That's great. Thank you, Imelda, for that informative information. This might seem like a bit of an obvious question, actually, but what benefit can people gain from accessing the scheme?
Sure. Well, of course, those who have status under the scheme will be able to continue to work in the UK without the need for visas or permits. They will be permitted access to the NHS for free, if they can do so at the moment. They will have access to public funds, including pension, if they are eligible. They will be able to enrol in education or continue to study in education if currently they're undertaking study. And finally, they will be able to travel in and out of the UK without the need to stop at a border and present paperwork. In addition, they should be able to use the e-gates, which permits quicker access through airports.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Imelda. I guess in light of what we have discussed today, how can we help?
Well, FSP can help by advising charities generally through your expertise, Ruo. In addition to that, on an immigration side specifically, we can help these charities who have users who want to access the scheme and they need some advice on the legal aspects of obtaining status. We can provide drop-in sessions for numbers of users or individuals. We can provide advice through Zoom meetings. If charities want to refer their individual users where they don't have the expertise, we can assist those individuals. And we can provide advice generally on an application or any kind of benefits or rights that these applicants will receive under the European Settlement Scheme. So that really concludes our talk on how we can assist through our charities expertise and immigration expertise on access to the European Settlement Scheme. If you'd like any further information, both of our details are on this last slide. We share our email contact details and telephone details together with our LinkedIn profiles. And we also have 2 websites, one which is called our Brexit Spotlight, which gives information on all negotiations happening with the EU at the moment, with links to various government sites. So if you have any questions on Brexit generally or the UK leaving the European Union, please go visit this site. And finally, we have a webpage for Ruo and the work she undertakes for charities and not-for-profits at the firm. So please, if you would like any further information on charities generally, please go to that page. I would just like to thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a good day ahead. Please look out for my next webinar, which will cover applications to the EU Settlement Scheme with graphic details on how you use the app and what information you need to provide. This will be with you shortly. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you, Ruo.